All right. So today I thought I'd get into this, rather than talk about day 4, day 5, day 6, because what we're going to talk about today really applies to day 4, day 5, day 6. I want to get into some real details because I know many of you don't follow a typical day 1, day 2, day 3, or day 4, day 5, day 6, but you want to put in all the parts that are included in those days to have great retention. And ultimately, that's the whole topic of today's talk is to we talked a few weeks ago about LTV, lifetime value of a patient. Well, this is really important because for a few reasons. When you really start to monitor lifetime value, what you're monitoring is how committed those patients are to receiving chiropractic care for their lifetime, throughout their lifetime, becoming a lifestyle. So building warrior patients, lifetime value is a good metric to monitor because really, what does that make up? If you took all of your day ones every single month, and I encourage you, if you're not taking these stats, to start taking these stats, because if you monitor all the people that come in for day one every single month, so what does lifetime value include? It includes all those day ones that actually convert onto a care plan, right? So they actually say, yes, this is something I want for my life, and they, resonates with them, and they actually conclude the purchase. They make the transaction, they make the purchase into a care plan. And even if you're just still doing the pay per show model, it's a sign of how many times they're going to come in. So you increase by the number of conversions, the number of people that commit to some level of care. It's how long they stay for. If they stay for a period of days, weeks, months, years, or throughout your lifetime of practice, that improves or increases the lifetime value. It means those patients have committed to care. And then the other way to do that, to increase lifetime value, is to obviously charge more per service or per care plan or whatever it is. Have that patient spend more money in your office. That increases the lifetime value. So from a metric of patients understanding the principle of chiropractic and agreeing to receive care for their, throughout their lifetime, that's a good metric to monitor, but it's also a monitor of the success of your business. So keep in mind, if there's ever a plan in your lifetime to say you want to make a change in your life, you want to make a change in your practice, you want to sell your practice, how do you evaluate your practice? One of the metrics to use is lifetime value. So if I'm buying a practice or if I'm selling a practice, one of the things I want to calculate is lifetime value of a patient. And again, it's a relative number. You calculate all the new patients you have in a month versus all the collections, and you divide those numbers out, and that gives a relative number that each patient is worth. Okay. And a healthy practice, like we said, is if you're above $1,000 of lifetime value, you're getting into a healthier range of practice. $1,000 would be around average. If you're below 1,000, it means you're not converting people, they're not staying for a long time, and frankly, your fees are probably too low for what you're delivering. You need to work on what you're delivering so you can increase the fee for that for the service. So it's a good thing to figure out. So it shows the health of your practice. So what does onboarding do? Well, when a patient actually commits to care, why is this important? When a patient actually commits to care, they have made a buying decision. So they've made a commitment. So you have your sales process. It's day 1, day 2, day 3, whatever that is. It's a sales process. So let's be really honest with ourselves and say that is our sales process. We educate the patient, we create trust, we create rapport, we examine them, we try to assess what they need, and we present a plan to them to say, this is really what you need from my professional opinion. And if they agree to those terms, they say yes, they buy into the care. So it confirms the buying decision. So after they've made the commitment to care, you bring them to day 4 or whatever day that is after the commitment, right? So this is the first step after the commitment. It has to happen very soon after the commitment because people have, and you guys have all experienced this, you've made a big purchase in your life. And what do people get? They get buyer's remorse. And I know you know what this feels like. You've made a big decision, and then later that day, the next day, whatever that is, you think, gosh, was that the right decision? Did I really need to spend that money? Did I just blow it? Did I make a bad decision? You question yourself. So what you're doing by doing this onboarding is you're confirming the buyer's decision. You're reinforcing in that patient's mind that they made the right decision. It also shows your professionalism. If a patient comes in, they don't really know anything about chiropractic, or maybe they've been to another chiropractor, or they have a preconceived notion of what they're going to get. Or let's even say they were at a chiropractic office that had all of their things in place. They did everything very systematically and had great systems and procedures. We need to up our game to either be better than the former patient, to exceed their expectations, to at least compare to people who are doing it really, really well. And it shows our professionalism. So it shows how well trained your team is to provide those systems. So this is something that we're going to talk about. And I really encourage you to put this in place as far as a training goes, because it really makes a huge difference with your bottom line. So social professionalism. It causes increased patient satisfaction and increased patient ascension. Well, what's ascension? Well, patient signs on to the care plan, but you have all these other services in your office that are really valuable. It might be a nutrition program, it's home care, it's supplement sales, it's whatever that may be. It may be other care plans that you have for modalities, whether you're doing decompression or you have some sort of modality like a soft wave, or maybe you have a massage therapist or naturopath. These are all services that you provide in your office. So patient ascension or customer ascension is that that person's committed to one of those services. Now you give them the options and you show them how valuable it is for their overall health and their overall progression to commit to some of these other services. So they ascend and they actually buy more than what they were originally thinking of. Okay. So you get them fully engaged in what you're delivering. And the other thing with this is you manage their expectations. And this is huge. Many people quit chiropractic care because their expectations were not met in some way. And we're going to talk about how to manage that through this next 30 minutes or so. And then, obviously we get into details as far as what happens when there's a missed appointment, what happens at the table, what happens if the patient experiences symptomatic changes. Maybe they get better real quick, maybe they get worse real quick. What happens during that? So if you manage their expectations and explain to them that if this happens, this is what our expectation is. Patient may be thinking one thing, but we have to manage their expectations so that we make sure that they can anticipate what the next steps are. And obviously, we want to talk about what is the patient responsibilities through their care. It's not all on the doctor. It's not all on the office. The patient has some responsibilities through this care. So when should this happen? Well, ideally after they sign the care plan. So whether you do that at a doctor's report, whether you have a one-on-one report of findings, whatever you're doing, it should happen at the very most 48 hours after that time frame. Typically the next day or no more than 2 days after. If you wait too long, what happens is you allow that buyer's remorse to start to fester. That's not a good thing. So you want to get to that person, get them onboarded as quick as possible. It reinforces their decision. And the chances of them now referring somebody are a lot higher, whether it's their family, their spouse, whether it's a close friend or relative, whatever that case is. Referrals are much higher when it happens very tight, very close together. There's what's called a buying window, and you'll recognize this as we talk about this. The patient's made a commitment. In their mind, you've presented, what you do very eloquently, very articulately. They have accepted the fact that they trust you now to address their problem and help them with their problem. So they've made a commitment in their mind to make the purchase. So they're exchanging some of their money for the service you're going to provide. Now they're in the buying window. And here's what happens. This is the time to recognize that and quote unquote upsell them to all of the things that are going to support them in having good success. Keep in mind, there's really two variables that people use to judge, is this a valuable thing to me? And number one is money, the cost of it, but number two is time. So if you can show them how valuable your service is, it justifies the money they spent, But if you can also show them how quickly they can get results to minimize their time commitment, that again increases the value. So this is the time to talk to them about home care. This is the time to talk to them about getting their family under care, getting their spouse under care, having a family plan for them. If you have a nutrition or weight loss program, they're in a buying window. If that's going to support their progression of chiropractic care and their healing, then that's a great time to introduce that. If you have workshops coming up or you run dinners or anything like that, this is the time to introduce those and get them signed up because they're in that buying window. They're committed. Whatever it takes to get the problem addressed in the best, most efficient way, this is the time they're going to commit to that. Or let's say you have an upsell one-on-one coaching program. Give them the things or encourage them, offer them the things that are going to support their decision and help them with more of the solution for their problem. So let's just say a person signs on for a 36 visit care plan or a 76 visit care plan or whatever care plan you're using. And maybe they're a little uncertain about things. This is a great time to say, hey, if you need some one-on-one help with this, we have a specific one-on-one coaching program, or maybe you do it in a group call. And this is, many offices are doing this, just like we're doing today, a group call with a bunch of select patients who have paid for the upgraded service to get on a call so you can encourage them. You can go over specific topics that is going to help themselves or going to help them to get better and faster healing, that's going to help them with their family or their children. Could be on a Zoom call, it could be a local meeting, it could be a dinner meeting, whatever that is. You can make a care plan that adds to their current level of service that is a quote unquote upsell. They're in that buying window, so many patients will commit to that. You can give them more help with the same thing. Here's an example. Let's say you commit to running a marathon. And I know because I went through this, one marathon in my life, but when I committed to it, it was all in and set the training schedule, got a new pair of shoes. You go out and buy everything that you need, whether it's shoes, socks, shorts, tank top, armbands, headphones, gel packs, hydration belt, all these things that are important to get you the best results after you've committed to running this marathon. So why not supply everything that they need in one place to get the fastest and most effective results for the time that they're going to put in? Let's say if you're the shoe store selling shoes and somebody comes in because they've committed to run a marathon and you just sell them the shoes, but you don't have any of the other stuff, they're going to go somewhere else to look for all the other stuff. They're going to go buy their hydration belt and their tank top and their clothing and their shorts somewhere else. Well, guess what happens when they run the next marathon? They're not going to come back to you. They're going to go to the place that serviced them in the best, most efficient way. So think about everything that goes into place to get that patient the best results. And that's why, Brian and I talk about this all the time, in that I believe everybody, no matter what your technique is, no matter what type of practice style you have, should be offering some level of home care. And home care can be classified into all kinds of different things. I mean, we have a great home care kit with head weights and sleep rolls and traction, wall traction units and wobble disc and everything. That works fantastic. But even if it's something like an orthopedic pillow or resistance bands or whatever that is, you put your home care kit together to engage the patient in their recovery on their own time, that actively involves them with their care. There's something psychological that happens with that patient when you actively involve them with their care. So that's very, very important. So if you're not doing that on a regular basis, the majority of your patients, if not all of your patients, have some level of home care equipment included in their plan or as an upsell to their plan. Definitely put that in because it will increase your retention big time. So what happens on the day 4 or the onboarding process time? Well, what we used to do in the office is that we would take that person and treat them like a VIP. And we always trained with our team. And one thing I would talk about with the team is try to inspire the team to say, if this was a 5-star hotel, how would we treat the clients? How would we treat our customers? That's how we want to treat the patient. So you go to a 5-star hotel, they have a concierge, and that concierge is at your beck and call. They will do, you want dinner reservations, you want a car rental, the concierge will do everything for you. So we said we want a concierge. So we had one of our CAs, and we actually gave her a term. In fact, she had a couple of handles, which is actually quite funny, but we actually called her the patient success manager. And she adopted that, and she took it very seriously and said, if I'm the patient success manager, she kept stats for, and I've mentioned this many times, she kept stats for every single new patient. So she knew every single day one that came in the office and had a list. It was on a clipboard. She kept it manually every single month. And she knew every single person where they were at in their progression of care. Did they make it to day 2? When they were at day 2? Have they made it to day 3? Did they come to the doctor's report? Did they bring their spouse? Have they made it to their first re-exam? So she would monitor every single patient on their level of care and bring it to every huddle and every staff meeting. So if somebody said, hey, what's happening with Sally Jones? She could immediately go to her list and say, oh, Sally Jones had to cancel her day 2 because of this reason. She's rescheduled for her day 2 next. She knew exactly what was going on all the time with every single patient. She took that and adapted that very well. We also, and here's the funny part of this, we also gave her the title of illumination management engineer. Well, what's that? Well, we wanted her to change the burnt out light bulbs. So she took that very seriously, and she actually went out and she would go to Home Depot and she would buy certain light bulbs because of their warmth or their ambiance. She said, in this room, we need a brighter effect. So she would go buy those daylight bulbs that lit up the room almost like a fluorescent light. And then in other rooms, she wanted a softer type of light. So it was a warm glow. And she took that very seriously and did a fantastic job of that. Just because we gave her the job and gave her the responsibility, we didn't micromanage her, but we just said, this is the bar. We're a 5-star hotel. You are now the concierge. This is your job to make this experience as great as possible. And she took it very seriously, did a fantastic job with it. So that's what I would encourage you guys with your staff, is to have that conversation with them, is raise their own bar. Ask them what they bring to the table. What good qualities do they possess as a staff member, as a human being? What can they bring as far as those qualities goes to the table? And how will that help the practice? How will that give the patients a better experience? And how will that end up increasing the bottom line? And of course, all of our team was on a bonus structure, which was similar to a profit share. So they all had a vested interest in it growing because there was something incentivized in it for themselves. But I think the majority of it is that we just gave them the vision. And here's a little side note. This is interesting. I was watching a video yesterday and talking about Elon Musk. Of course, everybody knows who Elon is. But one of the things that made Elon so successful was that every single business venture he went into, he started with the fact that this is a business venture that will change the world. When he created Tesla, he was creating an electric vehicle because it would save the planet. It was environmentally friendly and it would save the planet. That was his mission. And he used that leverage to bring people in with his vision. And he brought in very, very smart, very intelligent people, which helped drive the company in an upwards direction. He talks about SpaceX being the future of the world, that if the world ever ceased to exist, he would continue to allow human life to proliferate because of this management, this mission to get people into space and to live in space. That's his thinking. That's where he's thinking. And he's using those visions to create his companies because that's attracting people in. So build a vision for your office, inspire your team with that vision, and raise their bar. And once you do that, all of these other things start falling into place. So what we did is we provided a point of contact. So we had this patient success manager, and that patient would have direct contact with the patient success manager. If there was ever a problem, if there was ever a concern, something with their finances, credit card didn't go through, whatever that was, they would have a direct contact with our patient success manager. We would provide all of the notes and all of or a video of our onboarding process. So in other words, we would actually take a video, and we trained on this. We'd actually take a video of our onboarding process, and we could post it or we could share it via a link to show the patients, hey, you don't have to worry about this is overwhelming. You just started. I know we're going to go through your home care today. We're going to go through table procedures. We're going to go through how your check-in goes. We're going to go through what happens with the next steps. But we videotaped the template of that so that we could share with everybody so that they would have an idea. If they ever forgot something, they could go back and reference it on the video if they chose to. We pre-booked every single appointment. So if they signed up for a 36 visit care plan, every single visit was booked in the book. And we would just figure out what day you're coming in 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, this time. We'll just repeat that for the next however many weeks. So, and the term here is BAM-FAM, which is book a meeting from a meeting. You never even if and I'm going to tell you, so even if your patients are pay per show, like pay as they go models, where they're coming in and they're paying the visit, they never leave without another appointment being booked, or at least something scheduled. And our staff was fantastic about this. They were relentless. And the person says, well, I don't know my schedule. Well, how about we'll book one, put that on your calendar. If your schedule changes, you call us, we'll reschedule that for you. So they always took the lead on that. So again, I would encourage you, have this conversation with your team. You want to build good retention, make it a priority that those meetings are booked, those appointments are booked. One of the things that we would do during the onboarding is we would describe the office flow in detail. So the patient would get a key fob to check in. When they came in, they checked in here. This is what happens at the front desk. Then they would go and walk them through their home care procedures and do their wobbling, do their wall tractioning. And they would talk about how if it's a re-exam day, you don't do your wobbling. And this is what happens at the adjustment table. And they would go through the adjustment flow. We had a number system. It was actually a bunch of cards. And we talked about how to pick up a number here and what happens if you have to go to the bathroom. You do that before you start doing your wall tractioning and your wobbling so that you don't lose your place in line. If you have to change a number with some people, if somebody's ahead of you or behind you, for example, and you have to go to the bathroom, you look for the next number in line and you change the numbers, so you can go to the bathroom. They would talk all through these scenarios so the patient had a good idea of how the office flowed. Well, we had a lot of people coming in, so we had to make sure that it flowed very, very effectively so that it wasn't chaos. And this was all built over time because we tried to manage the chaos and eventually put systems in to manage the chaos. So describe the office flow in details. And then the big thing was what happens at the table. Because often, and you guys will recognize this, you go in, you walk into the room, you're in a flow, you're moving really well, and then somebody's sitting up. And the person says, hey, doc, I know you're busy, but, and then this long drawn out conversation or question happens. So we would address that during the onboarding, that if you have a question, write it down. The doctor can call you or email you afterwards, or we can set a special time for you to come in and have those concerns addressed. But it can't happen during regular adjustment times because the doctor only has a very limited time with you because it's going to be very busy and doesn't want to get behind. And with respect to other people's times, we don't want to get too far behind so that they have to wait. So we pre-framed all of this. Minimal talking during that time. They're lying down in position. We typically started with people prone, or depending on what type of adjustments we were doing, if we were doing a Y strap, or they would be lying in the position to receive the first adjustment, rather than lying in one position and have to turn over before they receive the first adjustment. If we started with a side posture, they would lie right side down in side posture, waiting to get set up for that first adjustment. So they're in position when the doc walks into the room. And that worked really well, but it was again pre-framed in the onboarding. So we're again managing expectations. So pre-frame the time period. And here's the thing too, is the patient has committed to a correction. The patient has committed to their schedule, however many visits that's going to be. Okay. So pre-frame the time period that you commit to coming during those times. You do your home care, you make time for the adjunctive therapies when you're here. So in other words, don't come in a rush saying, oh, I got to be in and out in 5 minutes today. manage those expectations in advance. So they come in, they do their warm up properly, they do their traction, they do their wobbling properly, so they get the best adjustment, and then they take the time afterwards to do their vibration or head weights or whatever that is. What happens if a week into care they start feeling better? Is the problem corrected? This was an objection that was managed on day 4. So great, you're feeling better. Then make sure you're sticking to your schedule, because the ultimate outcome is making sure we get changes on those x-rays or changes in the correction of your spine, whatever objection we're trying to measure. Maybe you'll feel worse. Hey, that's okay. Your body's changing. Stick with your schedule. Let us know. Stick with your schedule. We'll make sure that you're going to get through this. So again, pre-framed during that onboarding time. Again, the staff would talk about the sacrifice. They would at least acknowledge the effort that the person is putting in. So we're acknowledging the fact that they're putting in time. It's time out of their day, they're coming in, but the ultimate outcome is them getting back to the big why of why they came in. The ultimate outcome is them being able to play golf, or being able to go back to work, or being able to play with their grandkids without pain, whatever that is. So that again would be confirmed on day 4. The other thing we talk about is what's the next milestone. So it might be a 4-month care plan, 3-month care plan. We did 12-month care plans. We would always give it in short spurts. So your next re-exam is in 4 weeks. It's going to be on this date. So in that time, you're going to be here 12 times. Make sure that you're keeping up with those schedules. If you miss an appointment, then we'll make it up that same week. If for some reason you only got 2 appointments in 1 week, we'll get you here 4 times the next week. It's pre-framed on the day 4 or during that onboarding time. And then what happens at the end? Pre-framed again during onboarding time. At the end of your care plan, you've done your 36 visits. We did the re-exam. You're going to see great correction. You're probably going to be feeling a lot better. What happens then? That's when the doctor is going to talk to you about making sure that this doesn't go back to where it was when you first started. We're going to be talking about some sort of wellness plan or some sort of subluxation maintenance plan, subluxation prevention plan down the road. And again, incentivizing the team was really important. So this is something that, I encourage you guys to set this up in your training, and you can't train on this enough, because retained patients are far more valuable than new patients to your office. I'm going to tell you, in the long term, if your new patient flow ever completely dried up for whatever reason, but you had a bunch of warrior patients that were coming into the office, that were just coming in on a regular basis, that knew the principle, that understood why they're there, that could, manage your practice, and that could float your practice for a long time, even if your new patient flow dried right up. Okay. And I can tell you that from personal experience, through the injuries or through life-changing events that we've had over the years, because we had such a really strong maintenance wellness type of practice that really understood the principle. Practice, really, the numbers stayed very, very consistent, even if our new patient flow was very, very low. And again, you raise the bar for your team for the onboarding delivery. Have some incentives for them. Tell them how important it is. And again, share different analogies where they maybe have joined a gym or joined a club and been a little uncertain about the environment or the surroundings. And if somebody came and took them by the hand and showed them around and showed them the equipment and showed them the procedures, it makes people feel confident and comfortable with the decision to do that. And that's the comparison that we want our patients to have in this office. One thing that we implemented in the last few years of practice was an exit interview. And we would actually pre-frame it during the onboarding that, and the staff actually said, if for some reason something comes up and you have to stop care for whatever reason, whether it's the fact you're moving away, whether something in your life happens, they would identify a few different scenarios. Would you at least please agree to give us the time for the doctor to talk to you to ask the reasons why? Did you have a good experience? Was it not a good experience? If it wasn't a good experience, why wasn't it a good experience? Because, and they would, again, pre-frame it to say, Our goal is to provide the best service. We want to be the 5-star office. We want to be the 5-star hotel, the concierge experience. We want every person to have a great experience when they're here as they're healing and as they're going through this. So if for some reason we don't meet expectations, we want to know exactly why. Okay. And we scripted this out, we trained on it regularly, and we role played it. And this is something, guys, is that role playing in your staff meetings is so vital. And I know it feels goofy and it feels awkward, and a lot of people laugh about it and all this, but if you can role play and do it effectively in front of your peers or in front of your team members, then it just starts to naturally happen with patients. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So, and I would say commit to spending more time training than you do delivering. And that will absolutely grow your practice. So the patient success manager had this attitude, and we used to say compassionately aggressive, when they were following up with leads, when they were getting people in as far as the new patients go, when they were telling them to that how important it was to bring their spouse in for the doctor's report. Compassionately aggressive. So we're not taking no for an answer, because there's no excuse that's important enough for us to back down and say no. We know what works in our office, we know what results we get, and we know how important this is in some people's lives, that they get their life back. They get a total transformation when they get under chiropractic care. We know, we've seen it happen thousands of times. So we become compassionately aggressive to make sure that people follow through with what they're supposed to do so they can get the best results. So what are the takeaways here? Big picture things. So remember the cost to acquire a new patient. So whether you're spending time going out and doing lunch and learns, or whether you do makeovers, or you do a talk, or you have dinners, whatever it is, there's a cost to that. There's a monetary cost, there's a time cost, staff costs. There's these costs to get new patients, but the cost to retain a patient is significantly less. When you have, and again, if you want to put a value on your practice, and we start to evaluate practices or evaluate practices for sales or purchases, one of the things to look for, we talked about lifetime value, but monthly recurring revenue. So in other words, how many patients are on some sort of a regular maintenance or regular care plan where you're just constantly collecting every single month? It's just a monthly amount. And obviously for those practices where it's a pay-as-you-go type of framework, and that monthly recurring revenue is very minimal, that devalues the practice in the big scheme of things. So having that monthly recurring revenue is really, really important. So revenue retention, monthly recurring revenue, lifetime value, these are all variables and metrics that increase the value of your practice. So again, if you're not tracking stats, really it means you truly don't care, because stats will tell you where the weak areas are. And if you truly want to improve your delivery, and whether you want to grow or not, that it doesn't matter. This is not necessarily about growth, but it's just about making sure that you're delivering the best care and the best service that you can for every single person that you come in contact with, or every single person that comes to see you. If you can monitor your stats to know where your practice is not managing those expectations or not living up to people's expectations, it is really revealing. So start monitoring the day ones. Monitor how many of those day ones get to day 2. Monitor how many get to day 3. How many sign on for care? How many make it to their first re-exam? Calculate your lifetime value, and you'll start to see patterns. And you'll see patterns. Gosh, people are not getting from day 2 to day 3, or people that get to day 3 are not signing on to care packages. It's very revealing to show you where the bottlenecks are or where the weak areas are. And once you start to realize that, then you can work on those things, and it opens up the door for your practice to jump to the next level. Never be too busy for good customer service. And I would say to you is that you look at some of the biggest, most successful companies, and Amazon is a perfect example. Walmart's another perfect example. They are huge. They see a lot of people. Amazon is incredible, the amount of transactions that go on with Amazon, but why do people keep coming back? Because they have incredible customer service. something doesn't work right, you buy something, you don't like it for whatever reason, you can send it back. It's all part of the whole Prime membership, but they've figured it out on how to do it on a massively big scale. So there's no reason we can't take those same principles and manage those, or at least put some of those procedures in to our office. Talk to the unhappy patients. This is absolute gold, because this will show you where the weak areas are in your office. If you can manage those exit interviews, or at least pre-frame those exit interviews on your onboarding day, that when somebody does quit, or if somebody does quit, you can at least have a phone conversation or a meeting with them to say, hey, what I would even say is, if they have a concern, get angry. Like, I'm so upset that you had this concern. Be more angry than they are, because what's going to happen is that when you show that you're upset that you didn't deliver the service that they were expecting, it puts, first of all, it increases the relationship, it improves the relationship. It gives them some satisfaction that they weren't the only one feeling disgruntled about the care or the expectation that they had. But it also gives you the opportunity, and this happened many times, to get them back under a higher delivery of care. So, for example, somebody comes in, and we did this a few times, is that they would start once or maybe 2 times a week, and they wouldn't get the results, or they'd be unhappy, or they'd get into it a month or 6 weeks, and they weren't settled with everything. They weren't doing their home care. They were off track. And sure enough, we had that meeting. I'd get really upset with it. I said, that's not that is not what we expected. I'm really upset. I'd apologize for failing you to serve. Really, what I should have done at the beginning is got you on a course of care that was 3 to 4 times a week. And ultimately, many of those people would say, okay, let's try it. And they would literally jump into a higher care package as a result. And so we would not only save them, but they would jump into a better package where they're actually coming more often, paying more money, and getting better results. So this is really, really effective, really important to have those conversations with people that are disgruntled. In fact, our patient success manager would, anytime that there was some sort of an odd interaction in the office, whether it happened at the front desk or whether it happened at the table, she would put those people on the list of day 1, day 2 phone calls, and that would go on my list to make those calls on the way home. And I would call that person to say, hey, listen, I know you were a little upset today. What's going on? Was there something that we did that upset you? And ultimately that saved a lot of people from quitting or from just not coming back. Follow up regularly. So, and sometimes just implementing random follow-ups, even with good patients, just to give them a call. Imagine what would happen if you're seeing a doctor regularly, or you're seeing a health professional for whatever reason, and the health professional just called you out of the blue, said, hey, you know what? I was just thinking about you. I wanted to check on you. How are you doing? How are things progressing? You'd get off the phone and go, wow, be blown away. And that's the level of excitement and enthusiasm that you want those patients to have. So random phone calls to follow up are fantastic. So proactive customer service, we did, and we talked about the re-exam, having a questionnaire every single re-exam, which was a quality service questionnaire to get their feedback, and then doing those troubleshooting calls on a regular basis. So ultimately, I would say that if you're not training regularly on the onboarding, on what happens after a patient signs their care plan, put these things in place, because they are so vital for the longevity of the patient's life in your practice, but ultimately your bottom line in the practice. It pays off big time.